Good evening. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Jamestown Public School Board to order. It is March 18th at 5:15 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room. Please note that this evening, Gail Nelson, Jason Rohr, and Melissa Gleason are 3 board members that are joining us by phone. We'd like to welcome all those in our audience tonight that are here to join us. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Aaron, would you be willing to read the school board norms?
Yes. The board developed norms are to share and respect opinions and speak with united voice once a decision has been reached, execute all duties of the school board in compliance with North Dakota Century Code, properly prepare for meetings, and commit to assessing board effectiveness and ensure high-quality governance for all stakeholders.
Thank you, Aaron. We have nothing under public communication. Any conflicts of interest for the board to declare? Any conflicts of interest? Any conflicts of interest? If not, moving on to the consent agenda. Would the board like anything removed from the consent agenda? Would you like anything removed? If not, is there a motion? We have a motion, a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Moving into our regular meeting, we have some recognition tonight. We have Mental Health Awareness Night recognition and music recognition. Let's start with the Mental Health Awareness Night recognition. Dr. Light, did you want to say a few words?
I did, thank you. I wanted to recognize Mr. Rolson had just reached out to me before a meeting, and he had intended to come and share just a little bit, and he asked that I do so before the board reads the statement that's in the agenda. But just wanted to recognize what makes this night special, or what has made this recognition special. This is solely driven by our students, certainly supported by the activities director, Mindy Skunberg, a counselor, but this was requested and organized and completely focused on our students. So with the students that we're recognizing tonight are the ones responsible for this, and I wanted to make sure that we gave them credit for the hard work that they did. The idea was solely theirs and brought forward, and like I said, I think that's what makes this really pretty unique and special, that we have such high-quality student leaders in our district that are doing things like Mental Health Awareness Night and bringing great awareness to this issue. So with that, I would defer to Mr. Veldkamp.
The board would like to recognize, excuse me, the group of students, Mia Euland, Mari Anderson, and Ryan Larson, who led and organized a mental health awareness night during a February 16th basketball doubleheader versus Williston. This event was designed solely by students, along with the guidance of Mrs. Mindy Skunberg and Mr. Jim Roldson, to bring awareness to the challenges of mental health and the resources that exist to support all those struggling with mental health. This included an opening script read by Mia and Mari, communications and advertisement led by Ryan Larson, and working with community partners like Central Valley Health and the Jamestown Basketball Boosters. On behalf of the board, thank you for helping to shine a light on this issue and showcasing the outstanding student leaders we have at Jamestown Public Schools.
Thank you for your work. Next, we have some music recognition. Dan, would you be willing to read the music recognition?
Yes, I will. So today we got a couple of different organizations and festivals. We have the WDA Festival Star Honors for Flute Ensemble, Siri Tweeten, Ty Ballesteros, Madeline Grimm, Maya Tyson, and Jayla Hoffer. For Flute Ensemble, Sophie Hasbargen, Katie Ryan, Kaylin Ajay. Flute clarinet duet, Maya Tyson and Olivia Corinda. Mixed ensemble, Haley Spurgeon, Isaac Hasbargen, Olivia Corinda, and Kaya Heeb. Clarinet solo, Olivia Corinda. And flute solo, Maya Tyson. For North Dakota All-State Choir, Orchestra, and Band, which will be held in Bismarck on March 21st and 23rd. Colin Conway for mixed choir. Samuel Perlyberg for mixed choir. Haley Matthias, treble choir. Avery Mee, treble choir. Maddie Tyson, orchestra. Maya Tyson, orchestra, flute. Keen Rorda, orchestra. Olivia Corinta, band.
Congratulations to all the students. Moving on in our agenda, nothing under correspondence. Under reports, do we have a student council report tonight? No, okay. If they come later, we can just add them in. Number 2, food service report, Cindy Wall.
Hello, I'm here to give a report on our administrative review from the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction. It's the USDA School Nutrition Program administrative review that they do every 5 years. They look at 4 areas: the meal reimbursement, free and reduced meal applications, meal pattern, nutritional quality, financial management, and general program compliance. The free and reduced meal applications, we hit it spot on 100%. No worries there, no money taken away, yay. And they were very impressed that the staff and the students in this district would know what a reimbursable meal is. Everyone took a fruit or vegetable like they were supposed to. So you can tell, even though people were standing there, that it was just second nature to them to know what a reimbursable meal was. So very proud of that and very proud of my staff. We did get a few technical assistants. And that's in with the meal pattern for the high school. First of all, sorry, they reviewed on observation day. They were up at the high school and at Louis L'Amour, and they watched breakfast and lunch. So breakfast at the high school, they were serving 2 burritos and 2 pancake on a stick. They only need to serve 1. So they just basically told us that we need to weigh our grain instead of scoop it up. And then Louis L'Amour, she was serving 6 ounces of juice during the after-school snack program, but we were just documenting it as 4 ounces. So easy fix. And then our corrective action, actually the only corrective action we got was the high school, in which the vending machines did not have the right smart snack items in it. So as soon as those get changed and I get a picture, I can send it back, and then we're all good. So we got some ideas on the negative lunch count balance, what we can possibly do to help get that down, but we're kind of in the same boat as everybody else, so there's not a whole lot of ideas they could give us, but they did try to help. But all in all, it was a very, very good review, and not a whole lot to fix, so. If anybody has any questions, that's all I have for you.
Well, that's good news, Cindy. Thank you. Does the board have any questions? Aaron?
Yeah, just on the overdue balances there. So my understanding is that, was it $20,000 range?
A little
Is that
bit,
right?
yeah, or more.
That's basically the unpaid bills. Is that in line with where we were last year or similar?
It's been 17 to 20 plus.
Okay.
So,
And so when we don't collect on those, and that's basically a write-off as a loss, and that comes out of the general fund then, right? Okay.
if we can't get it collected, yeah.
Yep. Correct. Really what we need, 1.2 is we have had a number of members of our community that have stepped up and provided some support to the food service lunch account balance. We use some of that funding to help drive down costs of the largest balances, those that have the biggest concern with the ability to pay back. So we do have that fund. That is not recognized in that total amount now, nor does it recognize those. It is kind of a snapshot in time right now. As the year goes on, some of those funds as the year ends will be closed out because people will pay off. And really what we need for our community to understand is, we depend upon everybody to pay those lunch balances, and if they need additional support, they should be talking to the food service director. If they do need additional support on how they can pay those lunch balances, and we can certainly try to create a plan or to help out, but we do depend on everybody to pay those lunch balances the best that they can. And as the year goes on, again, we'll access that lunch balance, and others that are listed on that will be paid off between now and then also.
Yeah, all in all, they were very impressed with us, the district, the kids, so it was an excellent review, so, yeah. Anything else?
Any other questions? Thank you, Cindy. Thank you.
I wanted to comment to recognize Cindy and the team. I thought they did a fantastic job in preparing for this review, and of course, while the reviewers were here, they reached out specifically to me to let me know how great of a job our staff across the elementary, middle school, high school, and at district office in food service was doing. And I can't remember if Ms. Wall referenced this or not, but this is part of a 5-year review by the department. So every 5 years we get the on-site visit, and really an outstanding review from my perspective as well. So great job, team.
Thank you. Letter D, Board Education, number 1, Educational Competency, High School Assessment. We have Mr. Heinert and Caroline Thompson here tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us this evening. And first thing I want to note that we don't typically dress the same. This was the luck of the draw. But if people ask, we'll take credit for it, okay? So
I think it had something to do with a recent prom, too. So
it might be.
had to coordinate colors.
Just want to recognize Caroline's going to be leading the majority of our presentation this evening, but we'll be fielding questions. Both of us will be doing that. And I just wanted to point out, we are so grateful to have her and so fortunate. Her knowledge on standardized test scores is unbelievable. And so whenever I have data questions about performance, all right, she's the first one I go to. So I'm so very grateful that she was able to be a part of this, that she's a part of our school. Honestly, we would not see the jumps that we've seen in the recent years without her leadership. So very grateful to have her.
Thank you, Mr. Heiner. That is just really touching. I truly enjoy working with our school in terms of curriculum assessment and instruction, and tying all of that together and being that person that can have the time and be given the ability to reflect on each and every student that we have and their data, and how that is a meaningful part of our instructional pathway with each child. So I was very thrilled to be able to be part of your education on this topic this evening, and the interest, the genuine care and interest you've shown in the other coaches' presentations and education on the data and assessment systems that we have in place. They really are quite sophisticated this day and age, and I've really done a lot of work to embed a lot of links, since you are very interested in this area, through your questioning that I know you'll have to investigate over time. And I did that on purpose, and please send me questions, and I would just love to respond to that at this time. So I won't go through all of my links, but they are to expand your background knowledge as you endeavor to learn more about our world of assessment and instruction and how that's tied together. So I've prepared the data like they have with our state assessment data. We have some demographics in there too. Then we have our, we move into our STAR data. The STAR data is quite sophisticated and comprehensive, yielding about 50 reports at any given time, and I also have the ability to create custom reporting from STAR data. So I've just given you a few samples of those. And then I do present that AYP, annual yearly progress, that we went through in our MTSS conference this year, where we were able to be given the national norms against our data and do some comparison work on that. So I've got that in there too. I have our AP data over 5 years. Our ACT data is not quite complete from the spring semester yet, so it doesn't show a large number of students testing yet this year. And then finally, I've given you some data from our acceleration programs that we have at the end. So I'll go forward again. These terms that we use, benchmark, we consider that's like the mark of being on level. We just use that term that a student is proficient, that they are benchmark. And then at risk, we consider to be, you'll see the language as well as the color coding throughout all of the reports now. It's pretty standard that the benchmark is shown to you in green and your at risk in red and strategic is labeled in the yellow. At JHS, we have a very comprehensive and balanced system of assessments that I've really worked to establish and monitor to be tied to our instruction, tied to data that is meaningful to our students and meaningful to their career and college readiness goals. So we have all of these types of assessments going at any given time, and they are very, very important to us as we strive comprehensive. That really means that we want to test multiple data points. We never want to make decisions based on just one single data point. So it's this idea that you collect a lot of different data over time and over types of assessments. And then balance would be kind of along that same vein, that you can look at multiple areas and multiple facets of your instruction and how students are responding to that instruction, and then make your instructional adjustments. So these are all interesting links for you to just peruse and learn more about from the different sources of data that we have. I wanted to stop and give you this background knowledge as we talk about assessment. This is very, very important to understand that most of the assessments, we talk about criterion reference, and as we move into the standards-based grading world, we're really talking about a criteria-based assessment. So we're going to measure constantly against the standard that's going to become our criteria. Then you can take that data and you can norm reference that, and you want to norm reference on multiple levels. You want to do that at the state level, you want to do that at the national level, and then when we look at the AP results, you're actually looking at an international data point, because AP exams are now given across around the globe, really. Within that is the Lexile and Quantile, very, very efficient way for teachers, and a very important conception, way for teachers to look at math and reading data. This work has been done by PhDs. I've given you the link to Metametrics, was the first company that really endeavored in this, and they're all statisticians, and they're, the psychometrician world has become extremely relevant and advanced in educational. So they give us this, they bring us this language, and Lexile is what we talk about in reading, and Quantile is what we talk about in math, and if you will, they have normed out where a student should be over their educational experience from K to 12, and they have put that on a mathematical scale that is very, very easy discourse tool for us, and it's indicated in reading with an L. So like the number is always indicated, 100L would indicate a Lexile, and then that has been and scaled for teachers against a grade level and for parents. It's a very useful tool. And all of our reports that we try to send home have these numbers on them when we try to do a lot of educational work with our parents on what that means for their students' instruction, and with our teachers on what that means and how you respond to the gaps that a Lexile and Quantile would indicate. You'll also see I've given you a wonderful thing the state of North Dakota has provided for us, which is a career center and career and college readiness hub that you can put in the students go to set their Lexile goals and compare thousands and thousands of careers in terms of their Lexile and Quantile referencing. So it's a lot of very vast, comprehensive work that's very meaningful to educators, students, and families. We always try to get a lot of information out on that. So that's important to us. The coaches were talking, and we thought that we should also put this slide in there just so you understand that we're always touching back to this national framework. You probably heard us reference over and over, the multi-tiered system of supports. So we thought we would just show you a visual. When we think about a student's data, we're contextualizing it. Again, you see that color coding within this pyramidal sort of analogy or metaphor, if you will, just to help us as educators locate students in general. And a student could be different in math and different in reading and different in singing. You know, it's fluid. It's a very dynamic conceptual thought process, but it gives us sort of an anchor metaphor to look to when we discourse about our different data points. And I've given you some links in there. And we do attend a conference every summer. The MTSS conference is excellent. In Fargo, we all go up, and just some wonderful, wonderful learning is brought together by the state of North Dakota for us. Then a little bit about the test design. Test design, I know, is something that some of you will find very interesting and is a vast world, and so you can do these links. This year, we are taking the last year that it will be done by the American Institutes for Research, and which was purchased by Cambium Assessment, and the next year we'll be switching to the Pearson. But the idea is, again, that you have that criterions reference test that the North Dakota educators come together and bookmark where they believe those criteria should be for students to reach at every single year. And then they can give you that norming information and that Lexile and Quantile information in the background as a parent, so that you see a national comparison as well as understand your students' gaps perhaps a little more stridently, and then also have that North Dakota comparison. So we're very proud of our North Dakota comparison criterion benchmark data at JHS, as you probably know, because I know some of you are parents. And we call this the Blue Jay Nation's Blue Jay Way. We are just fantastically smart set of youth that try hard, that are intellectually just challenging themselves. Our teachers are very excited, and so you can see that in our data. This is taken from the North Dakota Insights, this is from, the NDSA website, this one. And you'll see that it's that color coding representation again. District is essentially us when you look at this, because we're the only high school in the district. And so these will be the same, and they're us. And there in math, you can see that we are 18% above the state in our percent proficient, but I'm particularly proud always of our blue zone, which is advanced representation on the NDSA. You will see that throughout we have very high, almost double all the time in the advanced in that comparison against North Dakota. I wanted to put these in there so that you would have that referencing. When they came out with the test designers and the statisticians initially did the studies and worked with our teachers, they actually made calculations of what would be in each category. And I find this really, really fascinating because of the difference between JHS. So originally the psychometricians and teachers and all the people gathered together studying this, it was a committee, I think, of about 80 people in North Dakota, predicted that there would be 13% at the 10th grade level in the advanced category. And so you can see that we are at 23%, well above the initial projections. And it's just fun to, again, look at the blue throughout. So that's what that slide is. And the technical report, you can read more, is kind of linked in there for you to see. But it's really good fun for me to see. And this one just is really enjoyable because it's just really quite exceptional. I think you'll agree that we have 35%, a higher percentage in advanced than we have even in just proficient. We actually have more advanced, and you just really do not see that statistically. That's an anomaly. I feel like, of course, their item bank that they bring to us from AIR and from Pearson next year has been normed nationally. It's a national item bank most often, even though they fine-tune it for our standards. But so I feel like probably nationally, we would be such a data exception with this statistical, with how well our students are doing. So it's just quite exciting. So again, there's the ELA one. You can see that initially the psychometrician said probably 12% would be in that advanced, and there we are, 35%. So it's just very exciting. All right. And then science was not given as many years, but again, we did very, very well in science. They did not publish out the comparison data from the initial projections for science because it was developed a little bit later. And then we go into our demographics. These are from the ND Insights website. I know you're familiar with that. And so you can just look through really and see how we would look through this is to set our goal areas and to go back and do further assessment that we needed to, further fine-tune our curriculums, our programs, things like that, and to reference it just for equity and make sure that we are providing equitable programs across our instructional platforms and everything like that. So just good data there, and you can look through all of that from ND Insights. All right. All others would be, we have such a statistical anomaly in our minority area that they do not break out our subcategories in that category. So all of our minority are lumped into all others because of the lack of simply of larger numbers. And so that's why that is there. Now we move into our STAR assessments, where I've given you lots of links to understand some more in depth about our STAR reports and what they might mean. But again, they are very, very capable. At any given time, I have 50 reports that I can access in probably 1 minute. It's a very nimble data system that they have, and they have since purchased the FastBridge, and they're just becoming more powerful all the time. I'm constantly in touch with this rep, and she's teaching me things and new reports, and very responsive to us, and recognizes the outstanding quality of work that our students are doing here in Jamestown. And you'll see I've given an example here. Like grade 12 is out of order because these are little click bars in real time that you can click and run align the data from smallest to greatest, and it's just wonderful, or greatest to smallest. So in this particular report, I can see who's not tested at any given time, which I do track. I look up every single one of these students and look and see if they have further data. Believe it or not, I have a record of all this, keep track of it, and try to assemble data points outside of the test window on them to make sure that every student, we have some data points and we're tracking if they are learning and growing. And then this is looking at just the 50th percentile, which is one way for us to look at that. It's a very broad-based way to look at it, but also, yields something very important. These numbers are very important to us. And this number is our growth percentile, which is actually very high for just a half a year. 35 would be the desired. So you can just study that one more in depth. But above the 50th percentile, above benchmark, our students really were growing tremendously. And then this report shows you a different breakdown, a different look, a color-coded more look in those 4 quartile areas. And this gives us kind of longitudinal data on a class. So you'll see that the 9th grade, I don't have data from them because they're FastBridge. But then the 10th grade, I'll have 2 years to see. And on this data, I'm looking for things like, are they moving from 9th grade? Look at the below 20th percentile. Is my program, our instructional acceleration programs, working to move students out of the red quartile, for example? And you can see very clearly here that it is, that we shrunk this category. And that would be very important to us in program and instruction evaluation. Okay, and then it just gets better. As I go through the years, now I can track these students all the way from 10th up, And we look at this in our data meetings and go over things like that and look at the programs we're using in math and reading and really try to fine tune everything. This last semester, we had 66.5% of our students grow, and that's very positive. I always love to celebrate that. And then we look and say, all right, why did the other roughly 30% not grow, or what can we do there? Where are they? What grade are they in? You know, what's going on? Are they taking the classes that fit their needs? And all of that type of discourse is what we have with this data.
Caroline, you talked about typical growth, because you're talking about making typical growth. What would that be? Help us define what that means.
Yes, so they consider that you want your students to be in the 50th, and I put some of that over here. But the SGP, they want you to be able to look at that and say, okay, over the course of a year, we made 50 per SGP per student, and then average out. So you can look back and say, okay, per student body, we had this much, and that would be what this number back here is, that this group below the 50th percentile grew more slowly. So in a semester, they say 35. You should be able to approximately to have that as your touchstone for students. Do they, that would be a normal growth rate that you would want to achieve. And so this group grew a little more slowly, but this group grew more rapidly, almost twice the pacing of the normed growth rate, so things like that. Yeah, it's a very interesting report to run, the student growth reports, and you can run those by class in STAR. You can run those by, I work with individual teachers to look at individual classes' growth, and then we might discuss why a particular class doesn't seem to be growing at the same rate as another class, and look systematically at that type of situation. And that's really advantageous to have that view. And then we go through the math with the same type of thing. You'll see that math had tremendous growth in the above 50th percentile last semester. And then these would be their stats. I just want to say that look how high their above 40th percentile, their benchmark students are, and look how much growth that their 9th graders had from 9th to 10th grade. That's very exciting to see. And then look at this one all the way from 9th grade to 11th grade. Again, that tremendous growth. Less students take the STAR in 12th grade because once they're so advanced in math in the Algebra 2s and the APs, we find that STAR is not sensitive enough to pick up on the high end, so we do not run that piece of data. That's why like students that are much higher level in math might not be having a STAR report, is because it's not a sensitive enough assessment instrument to give us the indicators we need, and we look more at our other program assessments and teacher assessments and things like that. But math had a tremendous growth rate. 74% of their students in the first semester grew, so that was very exciting to see. And these are some more just examples of the reports. These are the standards-based reports that we can mine out of STAR. A teacher can see these skills that would be missing, and again, that nice color coding. And these will be individual students over here, so we can see names and where their weaknesses are in ELA and in math. Very advantageous, lots of conversations around that. And we're hoping that some of our programs then in the background that we have, that we have for practice, for example, et cetera, we can program them to remediate. Like this skill category is all red, and we could actually choose to just in almost like 2 seconds assign a skill remediation group in that, and it could push out to our students through some of our computer programs that we have. These are some of the parent reports. I know that you all had asked about that in the past. You know, are we sending these reports home to parents? And so I just wanted to give you some of the STAR reports to have as example with all the names redacted, obviously. But these reports are something I work with parents to help understand anytime and all the time. And teachers work with parents to understand these, and I think they're very informative. And then this moves into the data that he had to start looking at when we attended the Evaluating Your Systems this year, and was very, very interesting calculation for me. So you basically took your green or your percent proficient, and you saw if that percentage grew and over the semester, And if you lost students out of there, why did you lose those kiddos? So that would be something that, I would talk about with the teachers, even talk about with the students. We saw a big drop in your STAR score, what's going on here? How can we instructionally respond and adjust? On the other hand, you can see if your intensive classes where we're running our acceleration programs are doing what they're supposed to do. And so that would be in green. So I was very happy. Our 10th grade programs, for example, working really well with 7.5% less in that category. So that means that we effectively moved that percentage of students upward and towards becoming strategic. Really, you want them to move through that MTSS pyramid all the way from the red to the yellow and then to the green with our acceleration programs that we run. This again is that look that the middle school and the elementary school had, where you are looking to see your school against the national norms in terms of your ability to move students forward. And so this was interesting to us, and we found that we were largely just middle quartile. Even though we are so proud of our NDSA data, we still have a lot of work and goals to set and work to do. So I very, very much enjoyed going through this calculation in those 4 days. That was very meaningful, and the discussions that came out of that. I also saw that I think some of our more powerful areas were our remediation programs. Our students in intensive programs were moving, and that made me very excited. So you can just have that. And then I ran it for math. I don't have the national norms, but I wanted to get just a basic look at our math. Were they moving? Were kids holding in the benchmark level? And math was growing kids tremendously in the benchmark. 5% grew from strategic, most likely, into that benchmark. And that was very exciting. Also, down here in the 10th grade, 10% grew in the area of the intensive math category. So that was very exciting, just in one semester. Here's our AP data. You really have to make meaning with the AP data using the national comparison info. There's a lot of this on the web. This is just one kind of reliable source, but it's always very interesting to look at the different classes and the different skill norms over the year and the averages and the means for the passing grade of 3, the score of 3. This year, our most exciting data point is we have 137 exams ordered. So a dramatic jump in the number of students willing to get out there and challenge themselves to rise to this level, do this level work, and I'm so proud of that and proud of particularly our pre-calculus. This will be the first year the College Board said sort of run this. If you want to test this out for free, the students and the family said, yes, we're willing to endeavor to do this curriculum, and they did. And so far, it's great success, and I'm very excited for them to have their exams coming up here in the spring. This is our ACT data, and again, you need to have that national comparison, so there's a link there to one site that would have national and the mean. We are in our composite well above the mean for all of these years. This year, we're waiting for that spring ACT data to come in. We don't have a lot of large numbers yet, so we're excited about that from the spring. This gives you more information on the Lexile growth chart. This is a Lexile growth chart so that you can interpret what this means when I say that we actually, in one semester, in one of our across the board in our acceleration program classes, we had approximately 2 years growth in just one semester in our acceleration program in reading. And then in math, we went, this is amazing to me, from a 56% novice score over the student body of 9th and 10th grade. We have this program in 9th and 10th grade. Now at the fall, winter, in winter they scored, from fall to winter, 91% only score, 21% novice. So that is a huge, huge leap forward in their mathematical skills on that quantile, if you can just even picture it linearly, on that quantile advancement, filling in their skill gaps. That's how that program works. It gives you what each child's skill gaps are, can push out a curriculum in those areas, and so we had a huge jump in that performance, and then 1,926 skills mastered from fall to winter. So I'm very happy about that. And that is the end.
Any questions from the board? It's a lot of information. Yeah. Dan?
Not a question. I will have questions, just because there's so much fun data just to go dig in here, and thank you for putting the links and presenting it like this. So I wanted to say thank you for putting it together. It's very readable, and it's good information.
Thank you. Thank you.
Aaron?
Yeah, I'd like to echo that too. So there's a lot of data. There are 37 pages of fun sitting in front of me here. One of the things, though, I did have just a brief opportunity to go through this before the meeting. But the challenge that I found is there's a lot of data in here. Transferring that data into information that allows me to interpret what's the scheme, what's the message, how are we actually rating ourselves and holding ourselves to this. So the different measurement schemes and assessment types and trying to relate how that all relates together is kind of difficult to kind of get my head wrapped around it in the half hour that I had to look at it. So I'm again, there is a lot of good stuff here, but if there's anything, I might have some questions later to come back to you with and just kind of, help me interpret, what it is that I'm looking at and how all these different things relate to each other. One of the things, though, I don't know if it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, but always comparing ourselves to norms, averages, relative to what? Are the national norms that you talk about, are those stable and consistent, or are those norms shift over time? So when we look at something from this year, how well does that compare to 3, 4, or 5 years ago? Are those norms fairly consistent?
They are very consistent. They've been developed. So think about a norm. A norm arrives like this. So in reading, the reading researchers have determined that by the time you leave kindergarten, for example, a student should know this many multisyllabic words and be able to read whatever it is, 15 words per sentence. And by the time they are in high school, they should be able to read 3 multisyllabic words per sentence and make meaning, and a 25-word sentence. So that's very, very stable research, and it's the same in math. So it's a very agreed upon over many years that geometry at this level should be able to do, thus and such number of proofs at the 10th grade geometry level. So that's all very stable. What we've seen in the recent years, though, that has come to kind of overlay that is what they call cognitive complexity design. And that has been growing with the national discourse that our children need to be prepared for an algorithmically driven future, which requires a lot of critical thinking, a lot of intake of information and responding to that information with evaluation and being able to synthesize information. So they brought in a lot of kind of cognitive research, and now in all of our like NDSA exams, all of the distractors, all the ABCD, for example, have to be correct, but one, it will be more correct, more cognitively, so they'll try to test design layering through the layers of, let's say, Webb's depth of knowledge, which goes from just basic knowledge all the way to an evaluative reflective capacity. Testing that in a student in one sit-down assessment, and then being able to scale that. So that has become a very sophisticated new type, and norming that has moved a little bit in how these doctors of psychometricians overlay that. It has changed and really evolved in the last few years, but in a way it's why we have to have like positions in a way like coaches that have time to study this and interpret it for teachers and interpret what does all this data mean for our instructional response, for our children's preparation and career and college readiness, because it is overwhelming and it has changed a lot and become a lot more sophisticated. But then what they do is, so like with the new SAT, recently the new SAT came out. Now it's not recent, but when that came out, they rapidly respond to norming that out again and seeing where that new cognitive complexity scale falls out. And so that's why you want to move back. That became normed. You want to shift all the time between, and norms are very confusing, and it's one reason I say we want to have a comprehensive system, because you don't want just one criterion or one norm. You want that as multiple points of norming against international, like an AP, a scale that absolutely gives you criterion norm against that, that benchmark. You just have to look at a lot of data because it has gotten exponentially more sophisticated in
But as
recent
far
years.
as the core, the reading, writing, arithmetic, those you say those are very stable and consistent
Yes,
throughout the
yep,
years. And,
yep,
okay. And then, again, just to my point on measuring ourselves against a national or state average, it's to me, I don't know that I really trust that just because that's an average without a standard deviation. If the population is getting spread more and more and more within that comparison model, how well is that actually, allowing us to measure ourselves? And is there any kind of push to get to more of an understanding of what that standard deviation is, or look at the benchmark achievers within those populations and then doing a comparison to that? So, for example, if you have a group of schools that are able to achieve a high performance level, wouldn't it benefit ourselves to measure and compare ourselves to how those high successful institutions are doing versus the total population?
Yes, I totally agree with you. And when you look at an assessment that's why ACT data and AP data is very important, because that's a benchmark assessment. You can say, well, the ASVAB is too. So we do want to look at those assessments that are very much benchmarked and compare our students and how they're doing on a criterion in a criterions referenced environment, because what they do a lot of times is they'll take a criterion reference test and then they'll do what they call equate it, which is run it back through a process of saying, well, we consider question 1 to be a harder question than question 2, and so we're going to give that some weighting in the score. And so you want some test data without that. I mean, you want that weighting, but you also want to get to your raw data, and so that you can see a true criterion and then compare that criterion against another set of students that you might look at. And a lot of our national assessments allow us to do that with our secondary high school kids, and I value them a lot for that. And we've tried to set goals this year, particularly for our ACT, to grow that area. We have a grant, I think, in that area, and we want to design, some programs to grow those scores that are those national, international comparison criterion scores. Makes sense?
Any other questions for the board? As you review it, can certainly be available for some responses. It was a lot of data. Thank you for presenting that.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank Mr. Heinert and Caroline Thompson, as well as Mr. Gaylor being in attendance. Dr. Leck, you had a couple comments.
I did, and I wanted to recognize this is the third of 3 presentations that the board has been given, at the elementary level, the middle level, and the high school level. And I want to recognize the coaches and administrators really answered a challenge, from me to say, we need to be, this is what I hope becomes the gold standard for us, but also, as we model out how we should be reporting data to our communities from our school districts. I really want us to be the gold standard of what that looks like. And I think the coaches and administrators really answered a challenge from us to say, how can we better report? How can we not live in the state average? How can we not live in an aggregate level where we're simply looking at from a 10,000-foot view, and how can we report more granularly to our public on what our assessments show and what they tell us, and how can we educate our community better and our board on how we utilize all this assessment. I've said before, we're assessment rich in our profession, and we used to be implementation poor. And I think what you're seeing in the last decade, at least in Jamestown Public Schools, but I think in our profession as a whole, is becoming more implementation rich, and we aren't there yet. And we aren't at the gold standard of reporting yet that we want to be. We'll depend a lot on your feedback on how can we make this, to Aaron's point, how can we make these presentations even better? But I think what we're doing, I believe, is a gold standard of how we're reporting data. and what we are doing to hold ourselves accountable and to celebrate too. There's a lot of real celebrations that are represented in the data that you've received in the last 3 meetings. A lot of very strong celebrations that represent how great our teachers do, how much our community supports education, how great our kids do, that everybody involved, our teachers, care so deeply about how to become better teachers and how to use data to become even more effective and efficient instructors. So these are all a lot of celebrations here. Now, we also wanted, though, to recognize where we can get better and how we can own areas that we're gapped in. We're not quite there yet, but how can we move the bar so when we're talking at this time 5 years from now, we can show and see how we've moved the bar and how we've gotten and how we've grown as an institution and how we've grown pedagogically and how we address learning gaps for kids. And so I want to recognize all of the hard work that went in from a lot with our coaches really coming together and saying, how do we want to report this? And I think that goes to our administrators and our coaches as well as Mr. Gaylor in really trying to find that message. And so, one more celebration and piece of pride that I have sitting in here for the last 3 meetings, listening to a very engaged board, asking a lot of questions. And that doesn't happen everywhere either. Sometimes in reporting, we want to see the highlights and move on. And I've been very much appreciative that as a board, you were asking questions to get down to that level of understanding. And so I also want to, and hope the board recognizes, and hope our community recognizes in our board that sense of engagement in this data. So thank you for that as well. But I think from a board education standpoint, I think this is really what board education is about, and how we can build capacity in really a very complex area for our community, but our board, and how we can share that vision moving forward. So thank you to all involved.
Yes, yes, thank you. Moving on our agenda, we have letter E, the superintendent's report. Dr. Leck.
Thank you. You have my written report. Just a few things to point out in the personnel recommendations. We did, as we are in an off year, what I would consider an off year to negotiate. We negotiated last year. By North Dakota Central Code, we can issue teaching contracts on March 1st on these off years. That's the earliest, and that is what we have done. So contracts have been issued for our teaching staff, and that time period has since come and gone so we do have a sense, and that's represented somewhat in our resignations as well. But our non-teaching professionals have been issued those agreements, as well as our administrators. Our finance committee is working still with our ancillary staff, our support staff, classified personnel, whatever designation you want to use. But we are still working with those to see, looking at that, at the compensation and wage study that we engaged with, and looking to target how we can do that in a phased approach. That isn't something we could implement in a year. We're finding that in the finance committee pretty easily. And it's something we knew. We knew we wouldn't be able to implement that in a year, but we're looking to prioritize, and how can we do that in a way that's equitable and fair for our classified staff as well. But that will be coming. We would have loved to have seen that happen earlier, but it's just not realistic as we, with all the different things that we have. But we can anticipate that in the next month or so at the long end of that. Hiring procedures, I did outline fairly detailed hiring procedures. And so I want to go through that with the board and recognize a lot of this whole section is really about trusting the process. We have around 400 employees that we hire within Jamestown Public Schools. The board can't be involved in every hire. The superintendent can't be involved in every hire. That's why we have protocols, procedures, and processes in place to make sure that there is a level of consistency and expectation as it relates to hiring. We all know hiring, those are some of the most important decisions that we make in any organization, but I think it's particularly true in education. And so there's two policies that really govern this, and for those that may be following along, if you want to go to the Jamestown School District website and go into the policy handbook, just take that path along the tabs to the policy handbook. What I'll be referencing is policy DBAA and DBAC. Those are the governing, kind of the anchor policies that this part of my report draws to. So DBAA is the recruitment, hiring, background checks for new classified personnel, and then DBAC is recruiting and hiring of teachers. So there are two different paths that are they're similar, but they take different paths. And really, the anchor idea behind what treats these two classified and credentialed staff differently, or contracted staff differently, relates to who makes that final decision. The final decision for teachers is made by the board. The final decision for classified staff by board policy is the superintendent. The board has provided that proxy responsibility to the superintendent, knowing, again, that really what makes those different is continuing contract rights. Teachers have continuing contract rights. All other staff, the classified staff, do not. North Dakota is an at-will state, and that's been the differentiation between teachers and every other support staff. So the process is similar, but it's not the same. So I wanted to detail what that would look like differently for teachers and support staff, and where that decision-making authority, even though, like I said, it's very similar, they follow slightly different paths to get to the same end. So as it relates to teachers, I've outlined 6 different steps that would occur, and I'll just read them quickly, and we'll talk about them a little bit more. But procedurally, selection of candidates for interview by an interview committee, and that interview committee is made up of different stakeholders, and we want to make sure that perspective is provided at that interview process. The ultimate recommendation comes from the building principal, but we want to make sure that that all perspectives are voiced and heard within that committee. So for teachers, that might be department heads, that might be other peer teachers, it might be grade level peers or partners, might be a counselor, or whoever else, whoever is deemed to be necessary to share a perspective. So selection of candidates for the interview by the interview committee of stakeholders, that's step 1. Step 2, of course, is then the actual interview by that committee. Step 3, the recommendation by the building administrator. Again, the recommendation comes not from the interview team. The team exists to share perspective. It's the administrator that is required to make that formal recommendation. So that decision gets made by one person based on the feedback from different stakeholders. So step 3, recommendation by the building administrator for consideration. That starts then, and I gave you a sample with a personnel hire form. That's the same in both. The personnel hire form is where that recommendation is made. So that personnel recommendation form, or that personnel hire form, excuse me, then goes to central office. That's step 4, a review by central office. So that's going to include a salary review if it's needed. You know, how does that fit into the salary schedule, years of experience? We do double checks. You know, the principal would have, the administrator in charge would have likely already made reference checks, maybe a couple cold reference calls to other administrators or people that have worked within that in the other school district. But at central office, they would do that salary review. They might do other reference checks, might be, you know, background checks depending on if this person is already licensed or not. We do have a separate BIB check that we do for some staff as well. But that's where that step 4 starts, central office, salary review. Then it goes to the superintendent. So after the salary review and the HR, they sign that. If you look at that personnel form, starts with the building principal, they sign, make that recommendation, goes to central office. HR and or the business office will also then sign when it clears to me as the superintendent. Then I do that last formal check So 3 steps before it comes to the board with reviews. So the last one for a teacher, and so essentially when I sign that signature, when you see my signature on the personnel hire form, that means that I'm making that formal approval then to the board. So the last step, of course, then, after the recommendation by the superintendent is board action to hire. So for a teacher, those are 6 steps that go through to make sure that we are making the right hire and again, that's just talent acquisition. One caveat to this that I did want to recognize and bring forward, and we actually have an example of that in my report this month, or this meeting, is personnel transfers. And you might ask the question, well, why don't we do personnel transfers at the board? And it really is all about continuing contracts. Those individuals already have continuing contracts. The board doesn't need to approve them because you've already approved a continuing contract for that individual. They might just be holding a different position. And sometimes they look big. It might be moving from one discipline area to another. But in others, they're very small, moving from kindergarten to first grade. I liken it as no different than a social studies teacher. I was an old social studies and English teacher. So if my principal said, Mr. Leck, right, this year I know you teach 5 sections of world history, but next year we need you to do 2 sections of world history and 3 of American history, that doesn't go to the board to get approved. That's a schedule change. And so that's how I would liken the continuing contracts. I provide them to the board for awareness because you often see, well, what position is this replacing? That's one of the aspects on the personal hire form. So I want to make sure that you see that you're connected to that path of what's happened and what's changed. So I'm just going to pause to see if there's any questions as it relates to the process for hiring teachers, because we'll go into support staff too. Okay, if there aren't questions, so the difference with our support staff relates to that final decision. The process going up to that is really pretty similar, but the difference is that I make the final decision, and board policy has directed me to be that final decision maker for hires of our classified employees. Anybody that's considered in the at-will status, that decision is finalized by me. So you'll notice that again, they're similar. An interview by a building administrator. So this may or may not include a full team. It really just depends on the position. But this may just be done by the building administrator. That's step 1. The second step, recommendation by the building administrator to central office. So again, you'll see that after consideration, maybe some reference checks that have come into place. But that principal director signs that same personnel hire form. The same information is provided. Who is this person replacing? Is this a new position? Is it a continued position? That goes to the central office for salary review. It wouldn't use the same negotiated agreement, but we do have support staff wage schedules, so we'd have to double check and make sure that we're placing people in the appropriate level at the appropriate step. Once that's signed off, so it starts with the building principal, goes to central office for review by HR, review by the business manager. It comes to me as the superintendent. When I sign that personnel hire form, that person is hired. And that's the same, we eliminate the board's action step. We want to make sure that these are positions we can bring on board immediately. When you hire teachers, that's generally somebody that's being hired for the next school year or the next semester maybe if we're hiring mid-year for a position. We want to start them immediately. We're already short, I think it's 12 custodians in the district, for example. When we make a position hire, we want to start them as soon as they pass that background check. We don't want to wait for the next board meeting. So when I sign that document, that means that they are hired pending those background checks and other contingencies that we have. So I think it's important to know too, like I started this with, it's one of the most important things that we do, and it's very process-driven. But I also want to recognize that the way that I do something, I'm going to back up. We've gone through, over the last 10 years, every board member has participated in the hire. Every board member that sits around at these board tables has gone through a hiring process for an administrator with me. And We do that to kind of give you a sense of what that looks like. Not everybody is going to do it exactly like I do it. We need to have some level of independence and uniqueness by administrator. They're going to do things somewhat differently. I will say that I think we need to get closer to more universal on how we do some aspects of those things, but we're working on those. And but I think generally speaking, you'll see that people do things, individual administrators do things very, from a procedure standpoint, very close to what you've seen as an example. Some steps might be different. You know, people have their unique takes on different things, so that's going to be somewhat different. But you'll see samples embedded in my report on how we select finalists, you know, and we grow these things over time. In the example that I gave you from the JVCTC, we had to hone in and be really purposeful on Department of Labor rules related to veterans preference. So we created a new rubric and spreadsheet so we can make sure that we're doing that absolutely correctly. And so we're providing that to all of our administrators to utilize to make sure that we are assessing those candidates in the interview process correctly. You've also seen one of the other exemplars that I gave you was the interview questions. And again, people do that differently. They're going to ask different questions and create those questions differently than I do. You know, what I want to take away from is every position is different. You know, we assess those positions differently, and we assess those positions based on what we need. You know, the process you're familiar with from me is really pretty defined in how we do that and very unique to every position. In a teaching position, that might not be quite that different from time to time, from interview to interview, but the idea is the same, that there are different needs at every position, and applaud our principals and our interview teams for the processes that they do go through to make sure that we are finding the right fit. That fit might be somebody with a great deal of experience. That might be somebody without a lot of experience, but we're really trying to drive into what is it that position needs at that period of time. And I think as a district, we do that very well. I think that's represented in the high-quality teachers that we do find and support staff that we do find and are able to support, even in a very shallow pool. The teaching profession and really all of our employment classifications, that pool has become more shallower and shallower every year we go. And I think that's a global issue that we really need to fix as a profession. But I think our district has done very well to make sure that we are finding the right candidates for our positions. And I'm very, very proud of the work that they do to do that. And I'm proud of the staff that we do have on board. I think there's clearly a high deal of emphasis put on finding the right people in our district. So with that, I hope that's provided a framework of what we do. And if there are questions, I would be happy to answer.
Any questions from the board? Dan?
No, just a comment. So I thank you for answering the question and kind of hitting the big points of it. Is, you know, when we're voting on something, we have to trust the process, and I think you've hit all the steps about making sure that the values of the district, what do we want the culture of the district to be, is accurately reflected within the starting point. So, no, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on.
I wanted to draw your attention. I had a really fun meeting the other day with an Eagle Scout, Rebecca Lloyd. She came in to share with me about what her Eagle Scout project proposal is. She wants to create, it's Rebecca Lloyd. She's planning to create sharing libraries. What she's referring to as sharing libraries, almost think of like a mailbox with a bigger front, in which the books can be shared in that sharing library, and students could go into that sharing library at any time, take a book, provide a book back, share it at any level, and she wants to create one at all 5 of our elementary schools. And so I gave her a little advice on how to go about some of the fundraising, gave her some ideas on things that she should be thinking about and people that she should be talking to. But I'm really very proud of, you know, as I told her, we are always recognizing as a district anytime our students excel And that could be, the board recognition that you provided tonight of, those that have achieved in music, whether it's in the fine arts, whether it's in activities, whether it's in an Eagle Scout. I just want to make sure that we are recognizing the high level of achievement that goes into anything that our students do. So I wanted to make sure to recognize Rebecca and her project. I was not a Boy Scout, but I know the work that Eagle Scouts, that our Scouts go through to reach Eagle Scout status, and it's really very impressive. So I wanted to make sure to recognize the work that she has done here to go there, to go in to hopefully go on and earn that Eagle Scout status. Just wanted to touch base with the board again. I haven't referenced Vital Networks in a while in the work that we're doing to assess culture, target some strategies for improvement, and then reassess them throughout the course of the year, and then next year as well. And so sometimes when we don't touch base on these, it can be, what are we doing? Have we done anything with these? And so I wanted to make sure to bring this back to the board, that this is still an area that we are focused on. We had an administrator meeting in early March to review the progress on how we're doing with building and achieving towards those building level goals. And then also Vital is scheduling one-on-one meetings with the building administrators. Felt we could get a little bit more granular with one-on-one meetings instead of kind of a group meeting. And they were interested in providing us some research and evidence-based strategies. As the buildings, each of our buildings, you're going to find different areas, different gaps by building to building. And I wanted Vital to provide some resources and ideas on how other districts have, if those that have seen similar types of data and how they've moved the bar, not to say, well, we need to do what Farmington, Minnesota does, but rather to get a list of ideas to see which ones may fit and fill that gap that we're seeing. Because again, our intent here is to reassess and see how we've moved the bar and progressed in those areas, and then target other areas, and how we can, just continue to have this idea of continuous improvement. And so I'm very thankful for Vital for helping us dig in a little bit more deeply, giving us ideas on how we can move that bar and to schedule those one-on-one meetings. So I'm looking forward to that. So for the next, year and a half, we'll have a little bit more work with Vital to do, but I've been thankful with what they've been able to do thus far. And with that, you'll act later on the deletion of assets. What we did was target some desks and chairs that will be going through the orphan grain train, and with a partner community in Africa. We're very fortunate in our country with the educational supplies that we have. What we've seen from some of our partner districts, partner communities across the world, we have a lot of things that sometimes it feels like we take for granted, desks, updated curriculum materials, and to see that there are other schools across the globe that are happy to have desks. And if we can give some of those desks that are taking up space in our middle school pool and give them to individuals that need and can use those tables and chairs and desks, I'm happy to be able to do that. A few years ago, we gave to the orphan grain train, and I'm thankful that we have that opportunity to do it again. So just want to draw your attention to that as well.
Any other questions from the board?
Do we have a plan now for the pool space? Because that was filled pretty high with those desks.
Well, actually, we moved those out last time. We took a number of them out. We've used that actually for an archery range down there. But we have more than enough desks, just to make sure that if we did transition and need desks again, that we would have them, but we have more than enough still, even with being able to give some to those that are a little bit more needy than we are.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? If not, moving on. Under F, nothing under old business. G, new business. Nothing under activities, buildings, and grounds. Number 3, curriculum, assessment, and instruction. A, approval of the 2024 summer school course offerings. Is there a motion? Motion by Dan. Second by Steve. We have a motion and a second for approval of the 2024 summer school course offerings. Any discussion? Dan?
Just a question on adequate enrollment. Is there kind of a definition on that?
Very loose, but I wanted to make sure that we had that included just in the event, we had a drop in enrollment, and we didn't feel like it was adequate to do, provide that class in this summer. But it's not our intention to do that, but I just wanted the flexibility to do that. But no, it's a pretty loose definition.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second for approval of the 2024 summer school course offerings. If there are no further questions, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Number 4, finance. And we have 3 things under finance. The first is approval of the 2024 summer school fee and salary schedule. Is there a motion? Motion by Steve. Is there a second? Second by Dan. We have a motion and a second for approval of the 2024 summer school fee and salary schedule. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. B, general fund balance, and C, monthly financial reports are there for your information. Are there any questions for Christy at this time? Okay, if not, moving on. Number 5, personnel. A, approval of the 2024 summer school staff contracts. Is there a motion? Motion by Aaron. Is there a second? Second by Dan. We have a motion and a second for approval of the 2024 summer school staff contracts. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. B, accept letter of resignation for the 2023 and 2024 extended contracts, and I'm going to read the names. Bill Nelson, Shelley Molson, Kimberly Carpenter, Andrew Fitzgerald, Ken Gardner, Tom Mouse, Denise Woods, Benjamin Smith, Debbie Krebs, Marshall Krieger, Larry Eslick, Cody Mickelson, Shane Ead, Nate Purcell, Mike Dietz, Jerry Wagon, and Eric Skunberg. Is there a motion? Motion by Dan. Is there a second? Second by Aaron.
I just wanted to make the comment, the board may, if you do cross-reference extended contracts, you might notice we have some that are not listed in there. If they've already resigned from their position, retiring or whatnot, they're not included in this list because they've already resigned.
So we have a motion and a second to accept letters of resignation for the 2023 to 2024 extended contracts for the names read. Any discussion? And just for our public's information, I just want to make sure, as you heard those names, these are not resignations from their position. It's just for their extended contracts, because sometimes I'll get a question on that. There being no further discussion, all those, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. C, approval to hire with continuing contracts for the 2024 to 2025 school year. Number 1, Renee Reed. Is there a motion? Motion by Steve. Is there a second? Second by Aaron. We have a motion and a second for approval to hire with continuing contract for the 2024 to 2025 school year, Renee Reed. Any discussion? There being no further discussion, all those, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. And thank you. D, approval of resignations at the conclusion of the 2023 to 2024 school year. Number 1, Juliana Wolf. 2, Bridget Helmick. Number 3, Evelyn Rios. Number 3, Rachel Rekov. And number 4, that was 5, Kaden Maring. Motion by Steve. Is there a second? Second by Dan. We have a motion and a second for approval of resignations at the conclusion of the 2023 to 2024 school year, number 1 through 5. Any discussion? Any discussion? Assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion approved, and thank you for your service to our district. Number 6, policy and procedures. So we have A, number 1, A, B, and C, and then 2 and 3. So we could do 1.
I think you can do, I have it set up, you can do all.
Yeah.
If the policy is A,
If the,
FFP,
so,
and FFP.
yeah, we have 1, A, B, and C, 2, and 3A. Does the board wish to approve them all at once or separate them out? Aaron? Okay. Then we have approval of amended Jamestown School Board policies, ACBB, FFD, and FFK. Number 1, approval of amended policy ACBB, significant contagious disease, with subsequent A, approval for amended ACBB-AR1, responding to potential health threats. B, approval of amended ACBB-AR2, universal precautions and sanitary cleanup. And C, review of amended ACBB-E, laws on immunizations, communicable diseases, reportable diseases, and significant contagious disease. Number 2, approval of amended policy FFD, possessing weapons. Number 3, approval of amended policy FFK, suspension and expulsion. A, and subsequent A, approval of amended FFK-AR2, suspension and expulsion of special education students. Is there a motion? Motion by Aaron. Is there a second? Second by Steve. We have a motion and a second for approval of A, number 1, A, B, C, and number 2, and number 3, and 3A. Any discussion? Dan?
Just a quick question, because some of these, there's a lot of verbiage added to them, so can you give a quick synopsis of what drove the changes?
So all of the changes relate to North Dakota School Board Association. We did not make any changes outside of their recommendations. For the most part, these are all law changes. A good example, I had some questions about the blade length. That's represented in possessing weapons, policy FFD. That is a legal change that was made that defined that. We were used to a longer length. We had a number in our head for years about how long a blade could be in school. That has changed significantly to 2.5. That actually is probably the most significant change, other than some verbiage changes. But that 2.5-inch blade length is probably the most significant change that's represented in here. But like I said, for the most part, the changes that are represented here are adding definitions. We haven't always had that. That's just a kind of a change to the policy format that School Boards Association has done. So you see the definitions that are done in there. Otherwise, it's somewhat law-related or sentence and grammatical shifts. If they were very significant changes, then we would have likely repealed. We would have repealed the policy and then did 2 drafts of a new one. So when you see an amendment, they're not substantive change, for the most part. Okay, good enough?
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? If not, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Moving on in our agenda, number 7, we have nothing under tuition. 8 under other. A, there's an election review process is there for your information. Does anyone have questions on that? And if anyone from the public has questions, they can contact the central office, and there's some information on the website as well. Items for future agenda. Are there any items for future agenda? If not, if you have an item for a future agenda, please let myself or Dr. Leck know. Meetings to be scheduled. Finance Committee is meeting on Wednesday, March 20th, so this Wednesday at 5:15 in the central office conference room. B, school board meeting is on Monday, April 1st, 2024 at 5:15 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room at the middle school. Your monthly superintendent evaluation is Section 2, Board Relations, and Section 3, Human Resource Management. There being no further business before the board, This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.